Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Metzia, page 22b, top of the page. Einan, with the words Einan Bechiyutan. The produce is not in the category of when water is placed upon the seed, and the produce is not susceptible to contracting ritual impurity. What is the reason that if the produce dried, the fact that the owner is glad does not render it susceptible to ritual impurity? Is it not due to the fact that we do not say, since the matter was revealed that he is amenable to the moisture now, he is also amenable from the outset? The same should be true with regard to despair that is not conscious. The fact that when he becomes aware of his loss, he despairs of its recovery, does not indicate that he despaired from the outset, contrary to the opinion of Rava. The Gemara rejects the proof. It is different there, as although the phrase is vocalized to mean when it is placed, it is written when one places ki'iten. From when it is arrived, the produce is rendered susceptible to ritual impurity only if the owner places the liquid on the produce. The Gemara asks, if so, in the first clause of the Braita too, the produce should not be rendered susceptible to contracting impurity, because the dew fell on the produce and was not placed there by the owner. The Gemara answers there, the explanation is, in accordance with the opinion of Rav Papa, as Rav Papa raised a contradiction. The verse states, but when water is placed upon the seed, and any part of a carcass falls thereon, it is ritually impure unto you. Leviticus 11:38. The word Yutan is written in the defective form, as if it says ki'itain. Accordingly, this would mean that one must actively place the water on the produce. Yes, we read it based on the tradition as to its correct pronunciation, as if it is written kiyutan, which includes any situation where the produce becomes wet. How so? How can the way the verse is written and the way it is read be reconciled? Be'inan kiyutan, dumia de kiyitain. Kiyutan when one places the kiyitain Yutan is written in a defective form as it is written ki'iten. Accordingly, it would mean that one must actively place the water on the produce. Yet we read it based on tradition that as to its correct pronunciation, as if it is written ki'utan, which includes any situation where the produce becomes wet. How so? How can the way the verse is written and the way it is read be reconciled? Rav Papa explains that we require the situation described by the words when water is placed be similar to the situation described by the words when one places the yiten, just as the term places yiten indicates that it is with the knowledge of the owner that the produce becomes wet. As he himself is placing the water, so too the term is placed, yutan, means that it is with knowledge that the produce becomes wet, despite the fact that he did not place the water himself. Therefore, no proof may be cited with regard to the matter of despair, where there is no Torah derivation requiring awareness from the outset. The Gemara suggests, come here, a proof from that which Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Yishmael ben Yehoshua. From where is it derived with regard to a lost item that the river swept away, that it is permitted for its finder to keep it? It is derived from the verse that says, written, so you shall do with his donkey, and so you shall do with his garment, or so shall you do with every lost item of your brother, which shall be lost from him, and you have found it. Deuteronomy 22:3. The verse states that one must return that which is lost from him, the owner, but is available to be found by any person. Excluded from that obligation is that which is lost from him and not available to be found by any person. It is ownerless property, and anyone who finds it may keep it. And the prohibition written in the verse against keeping an item that is lost to its owner is similar to the allowance to keep an item lost to all people that is inferred from the verse, just as in the case of the allowance. Whether there's a distinguishing mark and whether there's no distinguishing mark is permitted for the finder to keep it. So too, in the case of the prohibition, whether there is a distinguishing mark and whether there's no distinguishing mark is prohibited for the finder to keep it until there is a proof. There's proof the owner despaired of its recovery. The Gemara concludes the refutation of the opinion of Rava is indeed a conclusive refutation. The Hilchasa and the law is, and although in disputes between Abai and Rava, the halacha is typically ruled in accordance with the opinion of Rava. The halacha over here is in accordance with the opinion of Abaya in the disputes represented by the mnemonic Yal Kagam, famous thing in Shas where it's like Abaya as opposed to Rava. Yud, Ayin, Lamed, Kuf, Gimel, and Mem. Yud, Yushim Adas, Edom Zomen, Lechi, Karma Elav. Rav Acha, son of Rava, said to Rav Ashi, and now that the opinion of Rava was conclusively refuted, and the halacha is that despair is not conscious is not considered despair, if those dates are blown off the tree by the wind, how to eat them? Perhaps their owner did not despair of their recovery. Rav Ashi said to him, since there are repugnant creatures and creeping animals that eat the dates after they fall, the owner despairs of their recovering from the outset. Therefore, one who finds the dates may keep them. Rav Acha asked, perhaps the tree belongs to minor orphans, who, because they are not capable of relinquishing property, cannot despair of recovering the dates from the outset. Accordingly, what is the justification for eating found dates? Rav Ashi said to him, we do not presume a valley to be land belonging to the orphans, and therefore that is not a concern. Rav Acha asked, if the presumptive status of the trees was previously established as belonging to orphans, what is the halacha? If the trees were surrounded by fences and prevent repugnant creatures and creepy animals from gaining access, what is the halacha? Rav Ashi said to him, the dates are forbidden in those cases. The dates are forbidden in those cases. You can do it. The Mishnah teaches that if one found bundles of grain in a public area, those belong to him. Rabbah says, with regard to this ruling, with regard to an item on which there's a distinguishing mark, the Gemara comments, apparently Rabbah holds that the legal status of distinguishing mark is prone to be trampled, is not of a distinguishing mark, since the owner of the lost item knows that the mark is prone to be trampled. He does not rely on it, and he despairs of recovering the item. Okay. Despairs of recovering the item. Rava said, the sages taught this halacha only with regard to an item on which there is a distinguishing mark, but in regard to an item on which there is a distinguishing mark, the one who he finds it is obligated to proclaim his find. The Gemara comments, apparently Rava holds that the legal status of a distinguishing mark that is pure to be trampled is a distinguishing mark. Okay, further. And there are those who teach. The dispute with regard to this halacha independent of the Mishnah with regard to the legal status of a distinguishing mark that is prone to be traveled. Rava says it's not a distinguishing mark, and Rava says it is a distinguishing mark. The Gemara cites proof from that which we learned. From that which we learned. If one finds that which you learned in Brisa, if one finds bundles of grain in a public area, these belong to him. If he finds them in a secluded area, the finder takes them and proclaims his find. What are the circumstances? If it is a case where there is no distinguishing mark on the bundles, when one finds them in a secluded area, what does he proclaim? Rather, it is not a case where the distinguishing mark on the bundles, and there is a person for him to proclaim his land, and yet it is taught in the Brita that if he finds bundles in a public area and bundles that belong to him, apparently a distinguishing mark that is prone to be trampled is not a distinguishing mark. And this is a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Bava. Bava could have said to you, actually it is a case where there is no distinguishing mark on the bundles. And with regard to that which you said, when one finds them in a secluded area, what does he proclaim? He proclaims that he never owned that. He proclaims that the owner should provide location where he lost the bundles and thereby recovers bundles. Rabbah said the location provided by the owner is not a distinguishing mark that would enable the return of an item to its owner. As it was stated, the Amora disputed in this matter. With regard to location, Rabbah says it is not a distinguishing mark, and Rabbah says it is a distinguishing mark. Tashima, come in here from a brasa. If one finds bundles of grain in a public place, and these belong to him, if he finds them in a secluded area, and the finder takes them out and proclaim that his is his find, and with regard to the sheaves, meaning large sheaves, whether he finds them in a public area or whether he finds them in a secluded area, the finder takes them and proclaims to his line of reasoning. Proclaims his find. How does Rava explain the Brita and Lulav? The Brita about how does Rava explain the Rava explains according to his line of reasoning, the halacha is referring to bundles with a distinguishing mark, and Rava explains according to this line of reasoning that the Brisa is referring to bundles of location in their distinguishing work.